about what we do generally, about what the topics are for tonight. And I'm going to beg your indulgence to allow me to steer comments and conversations to those topics only. And I may have to ask you to explain why the comment you want to make is relevant. So I'll be as gentle as I can. I'll ask for your patience and your understanding. But we have a lot of people here. This is not something we usually deal with at a ZBA. We usually have maybe 1 or 2 people here, and we can spend a lot of time talking and chatting. We don't have to stay on topic. Tonight we do. I'm Mike Dean. I am the chair of the ZBA, at least until the votes are counted tonight, and we have to elect new officers. Sitting to my far right is Bill Finger. Bill, we presume, is a member-elect because nobody else besides him and Dan were running for the 2 seats. If one person cast a vote for Mr. Finger, he is elected. I did cast a vote for Mr. Finger, so I feel comfortable having him here. Same with Dan, except Dan Regan is also currently an alternate board member, which means when we don't have 5 members, we ask our alternate to step in and be a voting board member. So tonight, hereby I formally seat Dan as a voting member for this hearing. Mr. Finger is present to observe and to see how we do things. We gave him a seat close to the action. On this side, we have Susan Brown. She's a longtime board member. Madeline Johnson is my vice chair. I'm Mike Dean. We have Celia Alfiero here. This is Celia's last meeting. She chose not to run. She's been on ZBA for many, many years, and we will miss her after this meeting. But she has gracefully agreed to serve as an alternate for us should we need somebody in the future. Okay, so that's most of the bookkeeping. I looked at the minutes from the last meeting. I don't see anything in them that has bearing on this meeting, so I don't think we need to approve them before we start this hearing. So I'm gonna, if there's no objection, I'm gonna rearrange the order and we'll put those after the hearing, so you guys don't have to sit through that. Okie doke. So what are we here for tonight? We are going to hear from the developer of the Laramie Farms project. They want to put, just in very brief, they want to put a 300 unit housing development well back behind off of May Street and Route 4. It's likely not going to be visible from Route 4.
Maple Street.
I'm sorry. No, I don't know if it's going to be visible from Maple Street.
No, but it's on Maple Street. It's not on May Street.
Thanks. I get too confused.
Sorry.
If the entrance for traffic is on Route 4.
Yeah, the entrance is on Route 4. So there's been a lot of discussion on the listserv about this. Is anybody here not on the listserv? All right, that's about 900 people on the listserv get to see all this discussion. If you're not on it, you might want to sign up. You can see me afterwards. I'm also one of the administrators for the listserv. Some of the topics after the presentation, I'm going to address proactively so that anybody that's here, particularly to talk about whether the fire department trucks have long enough ladders. You can hear from our fire chief about that. He's here. I think he's here. Phil, are you here?
He's right here.
All right. We might ask Mr. Neely to step up and talk about that briefly. And there are some other concerns that were raised. Unfortunately, we're not going to address all of those concerns at this meeting because this meeting has very narrow scope. Yep. The scope, the matters that we're going to be talking about tonight are strictly limited to whether we can let Laramie Farms have buildings taller than 35 feet. That's one point. We're going to decide that as one variance. Separately, we'll hear another variance request about whether they may have more than one primary building on their building lot. Before we even get into it, I'm going to tell you that it's exceedingly likely that in the 2025 town meeting, Both of those limitations will be removed from the Enfield zoning ordinance. The planning board has already or is about to ask the select board to put that on the town warrant for 2025. That's something they've been discussing, changes to the zoning ordinance. So by the time these folks start construction, those provisions will be removed from the zoning ordinance. There are many other considerations, but those facts alone make it difficult to support voting no for these variances.
Has to be voting on.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
We'll
it
go through the full
changes, so
process.
It's not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed, right? So we have to act as the law is today, but we do have to take the future into consideration. Okay, so we're gonna have Mr. Doherty, are you gonna present the slideshow?
It'll be my attorney, John Cronin.
Attorney, counselor? All right, so we're gonna have Counselor Klein will present a slideshow, I think, or are you just gonna narrate?
I think we'll narrate and then we can, if you want to do the slideshow, we can go through it and walk through it so people can get a visual of it. But as Chairman said here, our scope is pretty narrow, but would like to do that, we can.
Okay, we'll do that.
Good.
So we're gonna have a presentation, and then after that, the board is gonna go through a process we call findings of fact, where we draw facts out of the presentation. We may ask the applicants for more information, add those to our list of facts. Then I will open for public comment. We're going to try to hear any abutters comments first, because there are 36 abutters in this hearing. Can I get a show of hands if any of the people here are direct abutters? Not just in the neighborhood, but direct abutters. Okay, when it's time. Did you get a notice in the mail? Okay, if you got a notice in the mail, you're a direct abutter. So I want to make sure all the direct abutters have a chance to speak before we hear from other people. And then we will move on to the general public. Bear in mind, if I gave everybody 3 minutes to talk, we'd be here until midnight. So I guess that's all I've got to say.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board and member-elect to the board. Thank you for entertaining this application this evening. My name is John Cronin. I'm a land use attorney from Manchester, but I do work throughout the state. Not sure I've been to this board before, but I've been at it for close to 40 years now, so I can't keep track of everywhere that I've been. With me tonight is Mr. Doherty. He's the applicant, DC Development. John DiVitetto there, who can raise his hand, is the property owner. And Carl Dubay is the consulting engineer that's done a lot of the design and layout for this project. Everyone will be available for questions to the extent that there are any. I appreciate Mr. Chair's introduction and highlighting the fact that the review relative to this project is pretty narrow this evening. We do know and we expect that if we can get through this process this evening, that we will be required to go to the planning board, which generally vets these plans, looks at things like utilities, they look at fire, they look at all sorts of things, access, traffic, and require you to do a lot of work so they can get a better handle on it. So just because we're limited tonight doesn't mean that the review overall will be limited if we go through it.
Let me stop you there,
Sure.
Counselor. Can everybody hear clearly? In the back, if you're having trouble, let me know.
I guess the air conditioner or heat came on.
Counselor, would you,
I'll try and turn. How's that?
you could even stand up here at the front of the room if you'd like,
Sure, I can do that.
if you don't mind.
I'm battling a little bad knee here, but I'll do my best.
You want to pull one of the chairs around?
No, I'll be fine.
Okay,
So just to reiterate where we spoke, and I
Thank you.
apologize for having my back turned to so many people. That's not a good way to present, but the process tonight for the variance in New Hampshire, for those of you who haven't been through this process before, there's a zoning ordinance and usually planning regulations. When you do a project, this scope and size, and any project for that matter, if you need zoning relief, which is pretty common, you come to the ZBA first. In fact, the planning board won't even hear you until you get your ZBA relief taken care of. And that's why we're here. Sometimes people will come and expect to have the whole plan vetted, but really the role of this application and our job is to pull in the plan generally, and to focus on the elements of relief that we are seeking. One of the variance requests is for building height. You have a limitation in your ordinance that limits the height of buildings. We're asking for relief in the form of a variance to allow that building height to change. The other thing that we're seeking relief for is the number of buildings on a lot. It's not uncommon for ordinance to require that each lot only have one building. And if you take, say, the great majority of communities, and let's say that a 2-acre lot is a standard size lot, they will say we want to have one home on that lot. You don't want to have 5 homes per lot. When you get to bigger developments, mixed use and things like this, it's very common that you have multiple units on a lot. Otherwise, they would never exist. I don't think it's any secret to anyone in here that's up with the news and reads the papers that we have a housing shortage in New Hampshire. And it's statewide. It's critical. I think the last report that I saw were about 20,000 units of housing short. Has an impact on the economy. It has an impact on employers. And it has an impact on people that are looking to change their living habits, whether it's old people like me wanting to sell the family home and downsize, whether it's people that are looking to share a place to work at one of your great resources up here in the valley. You know, we've got Dartmouth Hitchcock Hospital, one of the best in the country that's here. Also have Dartmouth College, and I know that there's been work on both of their parts to try and attract more housing to the region. In the process of submitting this application, we had an opportunity to review your master plan and some of your proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance that I believe are designed to support that master plan and dovetail. And what the master plan is calling for is to have more housing, and they want both diverse types and diverse kinds of housing. Mr. Doherty, Mr. Dubé, and Mr. DiBitetto tried their best to fashion this particular plan with a difficult piece of property that's, shall I say, been through the ringer a number of different times. There's been other projects that have been presented, I believe some that have approved, which I haven't been with, but either fell victim to cost of construction, economic rises and falls. And as we have it, we have a piece of unproductive property here that's relatively unique. When you look at the site itself, one of the great factors that allow us to design and propose an isolated or contained development is its access to the state highway. It's pretty close to exit 17, and the access will be limited to Route 4. There's not going to be a need to have regular access going through the adjacent neighborhoods. Some may have looked at the plan and seen emergency access. That's a gated access. That won't be open for regular traffic, but it will be available to fire, police, and emergency to the extent that it's needed. When we look at the land here, unfortunately, most developers for cost of construction, for ease of building, would like a piece of land that's about as flat as this table with no ledge. Unfortunately, you don't find that too often in New Hampshire. Most of our properties, especially large sizes, it's about 77 acres in size. They have varied terrain. This particular site, if you can see on the big picture, and you don't need to see it too close, but on the bottom right central, that's a considerable area of wetland that has to be protected. And there's some other pockets of wetland there that are also need to be protected in the course of development. That particular parcel, although you can't see it on the one-dimensional plan there, it rises steeply up the hill, steep grade, and then it flattens out. And we can meet the minimum grades proposed by the traffic safety regulations and the planning regulations. But it's, shall I say, a difficult piece of property to develop. It will be very expensive to do the site work. To try and configure the layout, the application calls for multi-use, multi-family buildings similar to this here. Tried to keep it in the colonial style as they laid it out. But there's also some townhouses, and I thought I saw a board, yeah, there are the townhouses here. So you get about 220 and 80 overall in terms of the number of units. And for cost efficiencies, you know, if you don't get these types of variances, it'd be difficult to do this project. It's much more expensive and to build laterally. If you squish those down in height and spread them out, have a lot more concrete on your foundation, you take up a lot more green space. So the desire is to make it vertical to the extent that you can. In your town, I won't say it's the only town, but it's pretty unique how you measure height. Manchester, where I'm from and do a lot of work, and Manchester is very different from here. I'm not suggesting that. But just to give you some idea, some communities will measure from the average grade. Right? So if you've got a little bit of slopes, they'll take the high point and the low point and average it. And they generally measure to the soffit on the gable end. They don't go up to the peak. Others will take from the high point. And in your case, you take from the low area up to the top. So when you look at it, it's a pretty substantial height distance. We call out in our application that these buildings will roughly be 73.3 feet, give or take a little bit, but we wouldn't exceed that. A lot of that is made up of gable, right, to get to the ridge. If you look at it, it looked like 3 visible stories. And if you look at 10 feet a story, maybe 12 feet, you're pretty close to what your regulation is. But when you add in the peak and the variable land, you need to have relief for that.
Yeah.
The second piece that I want to talk briefly about is the multiple lot. To develop this property through subdivision, we don't believe is the highest and best use because one would have to create all public roads and public streets. That's something towns generally don't want to do because they'll have to take over the maintenance and responsibility. And we would have to take that emergency access and make it full access. So as far as doing it all in subdivided lots, it's not typical for this type of development. Usually it's done on one parcel and there's common ownership in it. And that's why we're asking for the relief on that size. The New Hampshire Supreme Court says to get a variance, we have to address 5 criteria. The first 2, what they call is in the public interest to grant the variances. And the second one is in the spirit and intent of the ordinance. And the courts come up with a test for a lot of these prongs, as we call them. And the spirit and intent and the public interest are based on the same standard. And it came out of a case in Keene called Farag versus Keene. And the question in that particular case is if the variances are granted, will it substantially and in a marked degree alter in a negative way the essential character of the neighborhood? Now, if you look in a Manchester, for instance, it's an infill community. When you have a lot for development, rarely will you find a 77-acre piece where you can have adequate buffers. And usually most of the lots around you are all built. So putting something on an empty lot, it can change the character of the immediate area. You look at this particular site. One, we meet the density requirements of your ordinance. Your zoning drafters came up with a methodology to calculate density. We need that. So you can have those number of units that are out there. We'll be able to honor all of your setback requirements that are in your ordinance to give you buffer. And to Mr. Dubé's credit, and I should credit Mr. Knowles as landscape architect, one of the best in the state, has a very robust plan that we would be happy to present to the planning board and take input and enhance that to the extent that it's necessary. When we look at this particular project in its isolated space and through access to Route 4, we believe that we meet that criteria. The next prong is what they call the substantial justice prong. And no one's really defined it other than to say we call that the subjective test. You know, all of us that I think went to 6th grade, they put weight on objective tests and not so much on subjective, but we work with what we have. And the court said that's a balancing test. We look at the harm to the applicant if the variance is denied versus the gain to the public or vice versa if it's denied, right? So in this particular case, this has been an unproductive piece of property for a long time. Like to make meaningful use of it, make valuable use of it. These variances aren't granted, this project won't go forward. And that's a terrible detriment to me. Steve Vittetto there has been carrying this land for a long time. And he won't have anything to do with it because lesser density with the cost factor just doesn't work. When you look at the harm to the public, we believe that there's a benefit to the public. And I get it, if you live next door and you have an empty lot, you take 77 acres and develop it, it's going to create change. People, including me, don't like change. but that's really not the test. It's to the public at large. This project, when built out, it will take some time to do it, probably done some phases. You're looking at probably $75 million in development. Now, your tax ratio in town, I was told, is about 56% or so. So, that's bringing you 40 million in new tax base. When I started doing this back in the early 80s, one of the problems we ran into with multifamily developments was school children. Most of the folks that came out said, we like your project, we like the look of it, but we really can't handle any more kids at our schools. Those days are long gone. Our schools throughout New Hampshire are declining enrollments. They don't have enough kids to sustain the classrooms that they have. I did a case over in Seabrook recently. Second best in the country, 9-to-1 student-teacher ratio, and falling. So school systems are looking for more children. A project of this size, believe it or not, and some people may roll your eyes, but the data establishes it. Mark Fougier, who's a planning consultant, who's on the selectmen, Mark probably. He's working for us. He works for you guys. He's one of the best. He would tell you this would probably generate 14 to 16 school children. A lot of people that will live here will be people that, are related to work together at the hospital. They'll rent a 2-bedroom and each take a bedroom. You'll have some folks that downsize that maybe lock up in October, November and head to Florida and Arizona. But these types of projects are not attractive to people with children. They're looking for a single family house. They're looking for yards. They're looking for something else. So that's no longer the factor and the concern that it was. In terms of fire safety, and the fire chief is here and knows a lot better than I. There's a life safety code that's in place that these buildings will have to be built to, and modern building codes. So they'll be much more safe, much more efficient, much better to address any type of fire if it does result. And we understand, and again, we'll let the fire chief clarify that his department has the resources to safely manage these particular properties. Generally, the police calls to these particular buildings are nominal, no different than the general residential population. And when you look at it overall, this will be a very dramatic revenue positive project. So when you do that balancing test, we believe it weighs in our favor. When you look at it based on the upcoming zoning changes where we may not even need relief, it just solidifies that argument a little bit more. Another prong is we have to show that if the variances are granted, it will not diminish the market value of surrounding properties. Now, again, I'll use myself as an example. If I have an empty lot behind my house, someone builds a zoning compliant, it's going to change my world, and it may impair the value in my eyes. But if I can sell it for the same price with it or without it to the general public, there's no harm. As we often do here in cases of this size, we engage the services of Mark McKeon. He's a well-known appraiser who's out of Bedford, but he does hold license number 3, one of the longest serving appraisers in the state. He looked at the plans, he came to the property, he analyzed it. He prepared a report that we've submitted and it's in the record. And he's concluded that if the variances are granted and this property is built, it will not diminish the value of surrounding properties, the market value of surrounding properties. We believe that we've satisfied that test.
Counselor, will you say his name again?
Mark McKeon,
Thank you.
McKeon is the spelling on the last name to the clerk.
Thank you.
And I believe it's been
Yeah,
submitted
it's
to you
in-
in the record.
I was
It
in
is.
that, yeah.
We have a letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have copies of it. We need it. The final criteria is the hardship criteria. And that's changed dramatically in the years that I've been doing land use work. In the olden days, if you could raise a cow on your land, the court determined that you had an alternative viable use and you couldn't meet the hardship. It was an unsustainable standard. There's a case called Gray Rocks versus Hebron. Justice Sherm Porton, who was kind of a land use legend from Nashua, he took a weird path to the Supreme Court. Usually they go to the district court, Superior Court, and then to the Supreme Court. He late in his career took a seat on the Supreme Court and was kind of the land use legend. He wrote a dissenting opinion in Gray Rocks, and I rarely refer to dissenting opinions, but that opinion was a classic. because he challenged the hardship standard and said the current one at that time was unconstitutional and resulted in a taking of property rights. And he said that New Hampshire should shift to a reasonableness standard as opposed to a strict standard of alternative use. That led to a case called Boccia, where the standard was relaxed, and it ended with simplex, which is kind of the state of the law now. And that's a fair and substantial relationship of the ordinance to the application to the specific property, and is the proposed use a reasonable one. So we look at the drafters of the ordinance, typically they contemplate the type of developments and housing that you have. This type and size was probably not forefront in the eyes of the drafters, and looking at it in terms of height and multiple buildings on one lot. Is there a fair and substantial relationship to apply it to this lot? We think no. And we think that no is compounded by the fact that it's going to get changed anyway by the zoning amendments if voted in at town meeting. Is the use a reasonable one? This is the type of use that it seems every town is looking for with housing needs, particularly in a region. And when, occasionally we'll hear, we have enough apartments in our community, we don't want any more. New Hampshire is not a home rule state for zoning. The zoning power is vested in the state, and it's delegated to the cities and towns to draft zoning ordinance that they see fit for their community. But they have to follow the state law. And there's some enabling authority in 672(1) that say no opportunities for housing, particularly workforce housing. This is not, but it talks about workforce housing, and all housing should be diminished, delayed, or denied because of zoning or government regulation. That's just a general standard because the state recognizes as a state, not looking at individual subdivisions such as municipalities, for our economy to thrive, to create good jobs, to maintain a good workforce, and to have clean, new, decent housing. So we believe this is reasonable and that we satisfy the 5 criteria, and would ask you to look favorably on the request. People that have issues with it, we're happy to work with them through the planning process. It's not unusual if we get some direction from the town that maybe we have a pre-meeting or community meeting. We've done that before to hear concerns, and we can make modifications to the plan in the planning process. It's something that we can do and sit and work with folks to try and get the best development, not only for our team, but also for the community. So I'm happy to take any questions if you'd like. I'll ask Steve or Carl to take you through the presentation, the PowerPoint or the video. I think the chairman said he wanted to see that, so we.
Yeah, we'd like to see the PowerPoint. And I think you don't have a PowerPoint.
I don't have a PowerPoint, but
Yeah,
what we
I
do
do.
have, we did, we didn't bring any PowerPoint. What we did do, our architect had made a video of what it'd be like driving through this project at like sundown and nighttime. And it looks pretty good. It's a big project. I look at this project like a lot of you may or may not remember, but 40 years ago, Lakeview condominium project, when it came to town, it was 150 units. And at that point, that was the biggest thing that happened in Enfield, and it was kind of a scary project. And their septic systems had failed not too long ago. They had tied into the sewer system, and now it's a beautiful project. It was scary then, but it's beautiful, and people love it now. So that's kind of what I equated our project to. It's new, it's big, okay, and it's beautiful. All right, but when I designed the buildings, I tried to figure out because the master plan talked about buildings that fit in with the community. So I come up with a design of making the building kind of look like a barn, kind of have the gable end that kind of look like the Shaker Museum. Okay, so I tried to bring that together so that it didn't look like your typical urban apartment type structures with flat roofs, jogged in and out. Okay, I try to make it more of a country setting. And that's how we had come up with this particular design. It's 4 stories, and the top floor, some of the units will have lofts in them. I'm moving over to the townhouses. the same thing. We decided to go with like a garrison or colonial style home. Okay, with some nice lines in it. And, every unit will have a garage, parking out front. So we seem to meet all the criteria of what the master plan had been looking for. The beauty of this project is that we're on sewer and water. All right, which is another thing that the master plan is saying we should have reverse housing when you have sewer and water. So I think we checked all the boxes with the master plan for what it was looking for with design, density, sewer and water. I think we checked all the boxes. It was like we took the master plan and checked them off as we went down. And that's how this became developed. One of the things you'll see in the video, I'll hold this up. When you look at a site that's 77 acres, okay, a lot of times you'll have roadways meandering in and out around that property, and you'll have different pockets of housing in there. But in this particular site, the restrictions are that it's very steep. It's steep at the lower end. It smoothens out up above, but still rises. So the project became a linear project. Where it had to be built, it had to be built long. We can't go down the slopes. We have wetlands below us. I lose something? No. We can't, because the slopes below us, we have restrictions down there. And incidentally, on the apartment buildings, the land still rises behind us. So our roofs, probably, I think our roofs, don't hold me to this, but I'm pretty close. The elevation of the roof, I think, was 1079. It was the elevation of the roof. The top of the hill behind us, I believe, was 1087. So the hill behind us is higher than the roof that on our apartment buildings. So it's not like they're sticking up out of the ground. We got that hill still coming up behind us. Okay. So I'd like to show you the video. And keep in mind, it's a linear project where everything's in line like this. Okay, and we think we did a pretty nice job of putting it together. Rather than having it be able to meander around with different roads. We had to keep her tight and long. Okay?
Let me just share it.
Rob was, while we're waiting, I'll just share this anecdote with you. I was talking to Rob today about ways we could use the computer and the display to share information, and he warned me that this laptop is on its last legs. And one of the budget items that you'll vote on Saturday
It's Rob's laptop.
is Rob's laptop.
It's the conference room.
Right.
All right.
You can hit maximize on her.
Yes, I will.
Have you shared this video so that, yeah,
Yes.
great.
All right.
Maybe we could also drop the link into the chat
Sure. Yep.
at some point so people can see it. Let me warn you before this, okay, it started.
Hold on.
That's the entrance at Route 4. What you're seeing here is not Route 4.
Correct.
So after you've already come up to the development and you've turned off of Route 4 onto this. So what we're seeing here is the buffer between Route 4 and the start of that long line of buildings that go up the hill, roughly parallel to Maple Street, but set way back off of Maple Street.
This is the rendering, right? So
This is a render.
This is a video of the actual buildings and the roadways. Yes.
It's a simulation. Unfortunately, we haven't yet been able to go forward, get video and bring it back in time. We are working on that for
There we go.
future meetings.
Ready?
Can you back up to the beginning of the video again, so we can see exactly where it starts coming off Route 4?
Conceptually, is this across the road?
Essentially, yes.
It's jumpy.
download it from YouTube and then send it back out and then view it. This will look a lot better on your home computer if you look at the YouTube.
Like, right now. Right now, the tuning in right here. You're now looking at this. So now you're running between the two rows of townhouses.
I mean, that was.
It does look like the
That
Great
does
Stone
look like
Building.
the great.
Yeah,
stone
it
building.
does look like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us the stone dwelling. And not on Route
70.
This is not on Route 4 either at this point.
No, I said, and it's not on 4A.
No, it's not. No.
Yeah, this is quite a ways back off of 4A at this point, Route 4. I don't think so.
Oh, you can't just everything the Great Stone Building.
Can't do better than the Great Stone.
That's really nice.
I'm not that crazy.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, what Mike said, I'm gonna take the.
That concludes our presentation.
Does anyone need a short break?
Oh, yeah.
All right, I'd like to hear from our fire chief next, because that's a topic that a number of people on the list expressed concern about. Do you mind?
Nope.
Chief Neely?
I'm gonna stand back here and if everybody can hear me. I had met with the developers probably about 6 to 8 months ago when we first had sat down and talked about the project. And of course, the first reaction to any project is, wow, this is, it's big, it's beautiful. But as one of the presenters said, I mean, the building will have to be built to NFPA code. It will have to be built to building code. It will be fully sprinkled throughout every occupied area. And I guess the only word that I can use to describe how this building is built is compartmentalized, so that each unit in itself is separated from the other unit. Besides having the sprinklers, which we know have been proven to stop fire. Height, I don't have a concern with. The 35-foot has been in town forever. That was based upon what the town had for the longest ladder that could be put into use. We don't even use the 35-foot ladder anymore because of the weight and size of it. We have access to 5 ladder trucks. 3 of those are from full-time departments, so that their response time would be basically the same as our response time to this call, where we're a call department. I have spoken with the city of Lebanon, with the fire chief in the city. This project would have no bearing on their mutual aid response to us whatsoever. They are well able to accommodate a lot more, was how he put it to me. I don't know what else people have questions on, other than we do have the resources to fight fire in buildings such as this. But history and modern buildings do not typically burn. They just do not. The construction methods have changed dramatically so that they are built more, again, that compartmentalization, the materials. On the plan, it shows a parking theme, and underneath some of the buildings, there would have to be full separation from those to the living area in a number of hour rating separation. The only other thing that we had discussed was EV. And I think, and if I may, I'm gonna go with what I remember from our initial meeting was that EV would be outside of the parking area and underneath the building. If there's something was changed, they would have to look at, how that was to be protected. But given what history is also showing us, what we're finding with EV, we had discussed that this would be away from the building so that would not lead to any other problem. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Chief. We'll take questions from the public shortly. Okay, but we're not here to discuss fire safety. All right, we're here to allay your concerns about the 35-foot ladder for the truck. Because we're still focused on whether the board will approve a variance for the height and a variance for the number of buildings per lot. I'm going to take questions from the board first, and then I'm going to go to the public. So if you have a question, please listen to what other people are talking about, see if your question gets answered, so you don't have to ask it yourself. Mr. Reagan, you had first crack at this.
It's not related to the 35, so I will hold my question.
Thank
Can
you.
you talk, what did you say?
He said his question was not going to be related to the 35-foot limit, so he's willing to hold his question for another time.
All right, okay.
Madeline?
Yeah, mine is related to, this is directed to you. I can't see from here. So are all the buildings, are the townhouses the same height as the, whatever, the apartment units? What's the difference in them?
Okay, so the townhouses, because of the zoning in town, it goes from the lowest point
Get them,
to the
Madeline.
highest point. They're roughly 43 feet because we have the garages under.
Okay,
But on the uphill side, there will be, it's less because
Of course.
the ground is higher.
so the variance really is about, more about
It's
these
for both.
buildings.
It's
Okay,
for- It's for the townhouses because they're higher than 35 feet.
right,
Okay, and then when you get into this taller building, so you go from the lowest point, okay, to the very peak of the roof, so from, well, let's say way down to the very peak, was 73 feet,
okay.
okay? Because this pitch is pretty tall.
Got it. Thanks.
Any more questions from the board about the height?
Yeah.
Ceiling?
I just want to know on the side that faces Maple Street. Is that gonna be buffered from the Maple Street? Is the lighting gonna be glowing in the sky or
No, we're not.
interfering with the?
That's why I showed the video at nighttime, so you can see that it wasn't like lit up like a stadium, okay? But right now, the last building, these are the 3 apartments right here. And this is the last building. This road here was an emergency access that goes down to Maple,
Yes,
okay? It's gonna be gated. And another function of this dirt roadway, gravel roadway would be for all the people that live here could walk down there, ride bikes down there, go down to the downtown district from here. Okay, to use those services. That's what that would be for. No vehicular, stuff at all. But if I could point out one thing, on the video, we took you for a ride through the townhouses. Okay? Thank you, Tom. We took you for a ride through the townhouses, okay? But the reality is, there was another roadway right here that runs along the way like that and brings you up to the apartment building. So the people in the apartment buildings do not drive through the townhouses. They have their separate roadway. Can you see that there? Right here. So when you saw the video, it rode up the long road, and then we took a left, and then we swung through the townhouses. But the reality is, all the apartment people will continue straight on this road. Don't go through the townhouses, come to the Rotary, and then get into the apartment buildings.
Her question though was specifically, here's Maple Street.
Yeah.
There's trees here, right? There's.
Is there any buffer?
Is there any buffer?
Yeah,
But that-
Are people gonna see the buildings from?
I think they may. I think they'll see these right here. I think they will.
This, the next sheet probably said a little bit better.
So if you're wondering why this is relevant, I'm thinking it's relevant because if we allow them to build taller buildings, they're gonna be more easily visible from other parts of town.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you look at this page, this right here is Maple, right here. Maple runs like this, right up here. If we look at that page.
Tammy, where's your house on that roughly?
We're actually technically May, our lower property is what was almost in a butter.
Okay,
Our property is higher than that, and I'll be honest, I can see your logged lot from my house. It's going to be a glaring amount of light. What, right now is, I went outside and it was all stars.
Well, one thing that, hi, my name is Carl Dubay. A few things that we're doing is the lighting plans on residential, we can actually keep them low. Some developers actually have them, glaringly bright, like they're, we don't need to do that. The the national lighting standards for this could be very low light actually. And we call it dark sky friendly lighting design as well. So the lights aren't shining up and out or horizontally. They're very focused and shining right down onto the parking. And that's it. And they're cut off fixtures so that they don't spread light beyond that. So what we normally do is design for not tall poles. Tall poles with lights way up in the air. We actually bring it down to a residential scale, and they're shorter poles. And they're right up against the parking and facing towards the building. So there's cutoff design with these LED lights. And they do not have to be an operating room type of, 5K or 6K. They can actually be down around 3.5K, which again, are residential colors, a more warm color. So we do a lot of that. I think the distance between the apartment building itself and the homes on Maple is about 900 feet. So, it's not 100 feet or anything, it's 900 feet distance. And I granted, you're looking up the slope. But we do have them separated, so you're looking at these buildings that are 900 feet away. We can do a lot with landscape and a lot with buffers, which we have in our office. Landscape architects, that can add that flavor and that character and that texture and screening to the plans.
Carl, let me stop you there. Because that's all material that the planning board is gonna take into consideration and that you should all go to the planning board if they do. And make sure that your concerns about that visibility and that bright light are heard and taken into account. And I'm telling you this because in the zoning ordinance, we do say you can't have glary lights.
And one other thing on the building height, we mentioned, I don't know because I heard people asking questions in the back, that the building height, what we're taking is the worst case that Mr. Doherty talked about. But also that video was taken right down through on the lower side of the apartment buildings, through that parking area. We've actually taken out a lot of the cars in those parking areas, so you have a curb line to follow. And those cars are put in the garages of the apartment building. So you go into the end of the apartment building in a garage. It's great. You just walk into an elevator and up. But that also adds more height as that garage entrance, because you got to measure right to the bottom of that thing, all the way to the top of the roof. So it's like a big barn that had, you know, most of the big barns actually had an understory access, and then on the other side, a whole level up or even more. So when you look at these apartment buildings, on the other side of the apartment buildings, on the uphill side, it's actually a whole story less. And we didn't take credit for the calculations. We just did the worst case scenario. So on the other side, emergency access vehicles, fire trucks, or anything like that, it's actually a whole story less to get to. And that also holds true for the townhouses. Half the townhouses on the uphill side are called walkouts, or the walk up. So that each has a garage, and you walk up to your main living level. And if you walk to the far end of the townhouse, you have your patio. So it's at grade. So it's very it's a lot shorter than the calculations would allow. Fire chief is correct. We'd be doing an NFPA 13R. The apartment buildings, that's all by code, automatic sprinkler systems, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, anything else from the board?
I just have one more question. Is there any way to express, because it sounds as if the land sort of goes up and then you'll level it off and then it goes up to the hill behind. Are you able to express like the height from sort of down in the valley or the Maple Street to the level where the buildings are and then to what's behind it? Am I asking too much for you to be able to have like a sort of topographical explanation of that?
We actually have that. For the architects to actually do a 3D video.
Right.
They actually had to draw the plans and then do all the grading. Normally
Okay.
you wouldn't need grading, but because of building heights and all that, we actually had to do the grading. We have all the grading done on this for the next application, which is preliminary plans. But we didn't want to stand in front of you and say, oh yeah, this is all set. You know, we do these all the
Sure.
time, blah, 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 and we grade it out and then it's great. We meet all the AOT criteria, the town criteria and everything.
Carl, I
But we
think,
do have those plans, and there is a grade at the bottom where Route 4 is, and at the top. As Steve mentioned, once you get to the once you get up the road to that point, that's linear, it's relatively flat, actually. It just stays along that ridge. So it does all work. We do have 2-foot grading plans if you want to see them. I just didn't want to really like throw stuff at you.
That's okay.
Correct.
No, don't worry about it. It's not quite what I meant,
But
but
we
anyway.
do have elevations. I can look it up if you want. The grade at the Route 4 and the grade at the top of
Okay.
the.
all right, stop. What we're asking is, what's the elevation change overall from
I can, I have to just look at it.
roughly? Are you talking 500 feet,
No.
200 feet,
It is,
1,000 feet?
No.
so the grading plan at Route 4, so the grade at Route 4,
From Maple.
Maple. It's a- Grade all the way down to there, but we have grades. I just have to read it and I'm getting old.
Sorry.
It's okay
If you
to
wanna
give us a
keep
rough
going, I
estimate.
can just give you the answer as soon as I find.
Carl, what I'd really like is a very rough estimate. Are you talking about a 500-foot difference or a 100-foot difference?
About 100 feet,
That's great, thank you.
but and the road access, emergency access road is really long. So we're at, I think, no more than 10% grade. Okay, it's 10%.
So 100 feet up and 900 feet in roughly. So that gives people an
Well,
idea.
there you go. Well, that's 9%.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's see if we don't.
So that's from Maple to the top of the building. It's
No,
only a-
Wow.
No.
To the apartment complex where we're at a grade.
What's the grade change from Maple to the top?
Well, then you. Yeah, you add.
Add it on.
But the, 900 feet, but,
that's
Thank
great, thank you. Okay, I'd like to entertain questions from the audience and I want the butters first.
Could I ask one question first before we go there?
Yep, we're gonna give Dan one more
Okay,
question.
one more question. So Attorney Cronin, I think what I heard you say was if we stay at 35 feet, which is the zoning, this project is not going to go forward?
can't get the density to make all the numbers work.
Okay,
I mean, you could do a flat roof, but you wouldn't do that in New Hampshire, right?
Okay.
And
so you've come in here asking for twice what our zoning ordinance is. It's a pretty aggressive ask. I have some concerns about the size of these buildings. And I think for our residents on Maple Street, as well as the town, a number of different reasons. Is there something in between that does tip the scale where it's still a viable project between 35 and 70?
I asked that question of the design professionals and your first floor, right, when you start and look at density,
Yeah,
it's so expensive to get your foundation and your site work. You need the units to make the cost work. And unless you flat roof these, it doesn't seem like it would work.
So we're at 70 or nothing.
Yeah, and when you say it's an aggressive ask, keep in mind that the 35-foot limitation has been there for years because of the length of the fire truck that service it. That's no longer the issue here. So when you look at these buildings from the grade and when they go up and people say, gee, I'll see it. If it was 35 feet tall, those people that can see the ground now are gonna see it anyway. And if you thought about chopping it down to be a flat roof, the aesthetics of it would just be poor,
Yeah.
right? You're getting some value from the aesthetic by creating the height.
Yeah, so I'm not a developer and this is the
Yeah.
first time I've ever sat on a ZBA.
Sure.
Is this the way it usually works? You see the zoning ordinances and you just kind of put those to the side and you come in with what you want?
More and more, right? So,
Really?
there's an article in terms of government regulation, when you have older ordinances, it's not unusual. It would be more common. And when you say put it to the side, certainly we respect the ordinance and we're not ignoring it. And when you're looking to do developments like this, it's very common to need relief. And you look at the purpose of it. When I see that the purpose of the height was cover the fire truck, that's no longer an issue. It says the purpose of it is no longer there. So the height of these buildings for what they are,
Mhm.
you want to have multifamily, they're not unusual. 4-story building is pretty typical.
All right, thank you.
So to follow on to Dan's comment and Councilor Cronin's comment, our ordinance is old, and in the next 2 years, it's undergoing revision specifically to remove these some of the archaic provisions, while still giving us an opportunity to regulate how we want growth to happen in the town. In the 10 years that I've been on the zoning board, I've seen many people come before us to ask for 2 or 3 more feet on their housing footprint. And we have spent lots of time talking over, should we allow somebody to put a shed on their house or a porch on their lake house or this, that, and the other, because the ordinance doesn't fit the way the town really works, especially around the lakes. So I guess what I'm saying is they're not blowing smoke. They're both right. And we do often see developers come to us for very real problems like this. Okay, abutters first. Yes, ma'am.
I'm an abutter.
I need to get your name for the record.
Stephanie McSwain,
Stephanie Mixwing,
McSwain, MCSW.
McSwain.
Yeah, McSwain, yeah.
Okay, got it. You got that, Whitney? All right.
Can you also, sorry, do you mind just telling us where your abutting property is?
It's on 81 Maple.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to try to keep this question on topic because we'll have,
Talk to me. That's the easiest way.
okay, so we'll have opportunities for more questions at the planning board meeting.
Absolutely.
So my question goes back to, along the lines of what you guys were talking about, like the 900 feet from Maple. Do we have like small copies of that map we could take with us, or is that the only copy of the map we have? I just want to see like where, because there are several, it's on that map, there are several like yellow, like there's like a big kind of wetland spot and several little yellow spots. Like where was that 900 feet of land? Like,
So you can get any of these maps that you want from the zoning office.
Mhm.
So this man that's sitting here, Rob Taylor, he has all that information and he can make copies available to you. All right?
Yep.
Is that your question?
Yeah, it can, because it kind of goes back to visibility, like, are there some areas where on Maple where it's less than 900 feet, or is it like, is that the closest the building will be is 900 feet to our abutting houses
Okay.
in Maple? Yeah.
Other abutters?
Mike, would you ask people to stand when they speak?
Sure. Ma'am, would you stand, say your name and your address?
Gwen Dessert, I live at 18 Seymour Farm
Got
Drive.
that?
I'm on the east side of the development, right off Route 4.
Okay, you're gonna be asking about building height or about number of buildings on the land?
My comments.
Comment about those?
What
Yeah.
those are. So I know the master plan does encourage this, but it also recommends focusing this type of development more in the village and the Route 4 area.
Hmm.
I'm very well aware of the stream and the terrain up there because my house is right below that stream. It comes down to onto my property. So I'm very well aware of how that could impact me. I can't remember who talked about the hillside being up behind these properties. I think that all determines on where you're looking at the property. If you're at my house on Route 4A, that hill might be behind it. If you're on Maple Street, it's not. The Joneses property is almost as level as their property, which is right behind them. So when I'm in the back end of my property looking up, that's what I'm seeing. The road is, my trees are separating my property and theirs. Once they start taking that down, that's just gonna open up the space even more. So when you're coming west on Route 4, you are gonna see this, it's gonna be glaring. I mean, I can see Anderson Hill from my property because I'm up higher. So when you're coming from Canaan, it's gonna be sitting right on smack of the hill because there is no buffer behind it. That's gonna be more on the, like, back end side towards the Canaan Hanover town line. I have a lot of issues with this development, sorry. And I hate public speaking, so.
All right, let me
the one
restate
thing I
your,
wanted to ask-
before you go on, let me restate that comment, make sure we understand it correctly.
Mhm.
Your testimony is that people coming from the east, west along Route 4 will be able to see this development very easily. And
Yes.
that's probably gonna be true regardless of what the height of the building is, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so sounds like that particular comment is more relevant for the planning board because you're more concerned with the development overall rather than just the building height.
Well, if you have multiple buildings, you're clearing out a lot more of those trees, which are somewhat buffering that, that view. So if you're clearing that out to have this huge, inline spot, then yes, you're clearing out that whole strip. So when you're coming west to east or east to west, sorry, it's wide open, the whole strip. It's
Okay.
only if you're on the Route 4 side or over across the lake that you might have the buffer. of
Which
that.
would be cleared even if you put up a single house there.
Yeah. I
Right,
think-
so I'm gonna ask you to take those to the planning board.
Mhm.
It sounds like those are great concerns, and I think they need to go to the planning board.
So one question I did have for the ZBA is, when is a balloon test required? Is it ever?
That's a planning
whenever
board
you're-
question also.
So it doesn't matter if it's over the zoning ordinance or anything, you guys don't determine the balloon test for that?
No, we are answering. No. Once again, we're talking about whether we'll let them build taller than 35 feet and whether we'll let them have more than one building on this lot. That's it. Everything else, the character of the building, whether the development should go forward at all, balloon tests, visibility, changes in the view, that all goes to the planning board. And let me tell you, that process has only just barely started. So if you have those concerns, you are getting involved at exactly the right point. This is when you need to make yourself aware of when those meetings are going to happen, and you need to make time in your schedule to get to those meetings. All right?
I just have one more comment, and I know there's the master plan, but there's a lot of that, I think it was 2021 community survey. A lot of the responses in that do contradict this development going in, based on the character of the town, the wildlife. I mean, a lot of things contradict this going in.
All right, thank you for your comments. Abutters. Stan, state your name and your address.
And I live on 17 Moose River Road, so that first That's like, there's a White House right when you hit the dirt road in Canaan.
Mhm.
So we own like the 80 acres next to you. I
Did
guess,
you
what
get-
is the process?
Thomas, did you get a letter?
I did, yeah.
Okay,
What is, I guess it seems like there's almost like an admission that the 35 is gonna be overruled. There's almost got bias I hear. What is the process to get that 35 like actually approved? Is it so, it seems like there's an inevitability in 3 months that we're gonna vote on it and it might be obsolete anyway.
tonight, it might not be tonight. We might continue this meeting to another night. But it's this board that will decide whether or not they may build taller than 35 feet.
Yeah, I guess, like, I think there's probably other reasons. Probably the ladder was the original reason, but there's like, culture. And, there's other reasons, right? It's not just this, so I hear it getting dismissed as arbitrary, but that's what creates culture, right? Is these weird rules that Graham used to do. So I think it's worth thinking, like, is there a happy medium? And really, I really like what you brought up. That was very intelligent. So anyway, it just makes sense to not just throw the 35 feet away because of a ladder, right? There's more to it at this point.
I was asked the question if we could fight the building cars. I'm not making any comment about whether 35 is right or not.
No, I mean, I'm just looking at you just talk about, I'm not saying you did anything wrong. But I'm just saying it's worth thinking about more than just a ladder.
All right, let me restate. You're pointing out that rule has been on the books long enough that it has influenced the culture of the town by keeping building heights low.
That's right. Yeah, and then, yeah.
And that we should not dismiss it simply because the original intent was to help with fire safety.
That's correct, yeah.
Because now, at this point, we have short buildings in town because that existed on the books. Yeah. All right. Thank you for your comment.
Or because they were, well, except that the Great Stone Building's higher.
Yeah,
So,
but that predates zoning by
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'll ask that there not be crosstalk. If you want to answer a question that you feel you have heard posed in the audience, ask the chairman if you may address the question, please. Who's next? Abutters?
I'll stand.
Do we have abutters on the phone, so to speak? If there are abutters,
I have a question. I'm on the phone.
can you wait for just a moment?
Sure.
I may have to ask you to type out your question in the chat and have Rob read it out.
I did that.
So you did that. That's great.
This gentleman standing right here is right.
Let me take one other question in the room and then we'll come back to your question, HS. Yes, sir.
Hey, Greg Sargent, 65 Maple Street.
Got it.
So I'm gonna have a couple questions. I'm gonna be in direct eye shot when I walk out my sliding door of my home and get on the deck and look out into the back.
Is this about height?
It is. It is.
All right,
I'll
shoot.
get there. So I'm gonna be in direct eyesight of every single one of these.
Right.
All of them. So I have some questions about the height. Can I walk over here?
Sure, go ahead.
So I have some questions about first, this building right here. So this 73 or 4 feet tall, which is what the proposed height of this building is, correct? That is at its tallest point,
Yes,
and that's on the slope side facing my house.
wherever the lowest point around the building is,
Down
to the highest point of the roof, yes.
It's 74 feet, 73, what,
Mr. Sergeant, I think your house would be out in the back behind this. I think we're looking.
yeah, I'm down over there.
Yes, right.
That's correct. So if I heard the elevations correctly from the gentleman beside you, and I don't remember names, I apologize
100 feet.
sincerely. So we're talking from the bottom of this foundation that will be visible to ground at the 0 mark. That height is going to be 100 feet above elevation above my home on Maple Street, roughly,
I have to check that.
but that was the rough estimate.
Yeah, let's take that as a rough.
Yeah, you
Right.
ballpark, where the bottom sits is about 100.
Well, roughly, right? And then we're gonna add 73 and change on
Correct.
top of that,
Correct,
above our homes down on Maple Street.
correct,
So we're talking 174 feet in elevation above
correct.
single resident homes down on Maple Street.
The
If I'm
peak
hearing
of the roof.
If I'm hearing it correctly?
That's right.
Okay, all right, I'm just asking a question, I just wanted to find out some information. The other thing was on the townhouses. Is the townhouse here?
Yep.
What is the elevation of the townhouse at its lowest to highest? That's also,
About 40 feet, 42 feet
and that's with the
The
slope of
bottom
land and everything?
to the peak, yeah.
Okay,
So shorter.
so sure.
Well,
Okay.
less than 10 feet over the current.
Less than 10
35.
feet.
Yeah.
But the other building that you're asking variance for, you guys asked for a variance of double.
Correct.
Okay, and I'm sorry if I'm reiterating
Yeah,
or
it's okay.
going back and doubling up. I just want to make sure I get the proper information.
Would you like to make a comment or were you
Well-
using your time for questions?
Well, my concern is, and I understand this because I'm into building trades. So I'm just, from a visual standpoint of
Yeah.
my house, which is a ranch house, so it's not a tall
Mm-hmm.
anything. But if I look up that hill behind my house, and I don't know the name of the hill, I know it as Moose Mountain, I think it's called Moose Mountain Range. But when I look up that hill, up towards the Jones property, which is up on top of the hill,
Okay.
I don't see anything up there at that elevation that's going to keep me from not seeing the peak of this building above the trees.
It's possible.
When
We
I
don't
stand
know
on my deck and look up there, I believe, and this is just from being in the building trades and elevations and seeing how things are built, that this building, and maybe this data to prove otherwise, but until I see that, I'm going to say that I'm going to see a portion of this peak above that tree line. And if that in fact is the case, then that is a huge no-no for the people who have to be forced into seeing this particular thing. And I'm not saying that in any negative light, it's just the facts of what can happen and what looks like will be there.
Thank you for your comment.
So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
Right.
It's not just about a 74-foot tall building because the pine trees that are gonna sit directly behind the building, like abut this, they're all 80-footers or how big they're giant. And I know that from hunting up there. Those are gonna be the same height as this, but when you're talking about changing the angle of your vision and looking up that hill, that changes everything as to what the peak looks like from down there on the street. So for all of us abutters, the people across the way, we may need to ask for some sort of middle ground that the gentleman across the table had asked for. That may be a solution here. The townhouses may not affect that. This needs to be addressed.
Okay, this is relevant to the height question before the zoning board because it's something we'll have to consider when we think about substantial justice and about spirit of the ordinance. So we'll have to do a balancing act here. However, it is also something that you need to take to the planning board. You need to make them aware of that particular geometry. It might be good to actually draw out those angles. So you can see for yourselves what that's, how is the silhouette of that building going to be present in your view against the back of the mountain? From what angles, that might be a good study to do for the developers. Right, online.
We've got some questions.
Okay, with the elevation only 10 feet below the ridge line, this will be visible from a huge area of town and parts of Canaan and Hanover. That's from Tony DeFelici. Thank you, Tony. Do you have anything you want to add to that, or is that good for you?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony.
Heidi Sidley.
Heidi Sibley. Did I say that right? Sibley?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Are there any projections on percent of occupancy on these units given demand in the area? If that's not under our purview, I'm happy to ask the developers if they have a projection, if they can answer very briefly.
In this demand, you would expect it to be full occupancy. It takes a while to to get it going, but generally stabilized with ups and downs in the market. 5% vacancy would be the standard.
Can I tell them roughly when you're ready to start taking people moving in and when the whole project would finish?
A couple of years.
Couple of years before they're ready to have people move in, maybe, and would you move in phases?
Yes.
Okay, so you'd have people
A
moving
building,
in.
It would be a building at a time, not portions of a building. A building at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Heidi, does that answer your question?
Yep, thanks.
Tony wants to know if there's a balloon test not directly relevant to doubling the allowable height. It might be, but again, it's not for this board to decide. That's not something we would consider. I see a hand in the air from a person who has his camera on. Christopher.
On you, Chris Ross.
Type
Yeah,
your question in, Chris, and we'll read it for you.
Can I just speak?
Sure, sure.
So Christopher Ross, I live on 30 Stevens Street. I'm a local residential designer, done numerous custom homes in the area and some small multifamily projects. Question to the height. Could you give the approximate width, length, and the pitch of the roof?
Width, length, and pitch of the roof.
So
what's
width
the
of the
building?
width of the building, how fat is the building? How long is it? And what's your roof pitch?
Rough estimates on the apartment buildings is enough.
That on the apartments, that's correct.
So they don't have final plans yet. They're very early in the planning stage for this, but they're gonna give you some estimates if you give us a second. While they're looking for that up, I'm gonna read a couple more comments. Heidi Sibley also asks, are there any revenue projections to the town from these units? Yeah, roughly $35 million added to the tax base when it's all done.
How do you get that?
He said that.
What's that?
I can explain it.
Yeah,
But
Let's
that's
hold on.
not, that's not our,
That's not for us.
that's not for us.
Yeah. I'm happy to give you quick answers to questions if we have them in the data that's been presented so far. Taylor Hawkins asks, if the decision is going to be made by does this imply a new maximum bill? No, we do not, through granting variances, change the zoning ordinance. What we do is allow a change for a specific provision for a specific piece of property. That's all we're doing. We're giving you a hall pass. We're not saying when you can go to the bathroom. Do we have an answer for Christopher Ross about the building dimensions? All right, I'm gonna come back to the room then. Mr. Buffet, you've been very patient. Are you gonna talk directly to the issues under consideration, height,
I am.
number of buildings?
Bill. You can hear me better without that. Dave Buffet for the, minutes taker. Bill, you had mentioned that, with mutual aid from Lebanon and Hanover, you had access to, ladder trucks, within what you consider to be a reasonable amount of time. What is the cost to the town for mutual aid service such as that?
$0. We provide mutual aid to those towns as well.
And not addressed on this, but I think a major concern to those of us who are on town water and sewer. It was mentioned that there would be water and sewer as part of this project. I didn't see anything addressed regarding that beyond any details.
Do you know why?
Who is building that? Who is
It's not.
responsible?
Do you know why?
It's probably right?
Yeah.
I wondered that myself. You know what I thought is, that's great because I think customers of the town sewer and water are gonna like that because it means more people paying for that system. And I know the planning board and the town will be careful to ensure that capacity is added if necessary. That'll be part of the planning process.
Who's responsible for that?
Usually it'd be put on the development. Okay, yes, ma'am, please stand.
It's Betty Plickta. What else did you need? Where I live?
Yeah, tell us where you are.
I'm at Crystal Lake.
Okay. Debbie, click this.
This gentleman, I'm sorry, I don't remember.
It's fine. Oh,
So,
Go phonetic and get it off.
So I know you said that, you know, the ladder in Enfield, because I don't even know where the fire department is in Enfield, so I apologize, but you said that those ladders were heavy and blah, blah, blah. And you said that the response time from Lebanon would be okay and the surrounding districts, and that would be fine. But you didn't say whether those fire trucks could reach a 70-foot window. And
Lebanon has 200-foot ladders, and I believe the other is 110. So that, and again, I was thinking about this afterwards, because driving through there, seeing the cars parked in front of the buildings, that's still enough distance for those trucks to be set between the parked cars to be able to reach that. height.
So yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Ms. Plickton, would you spell your last name for the minutes, please? Did you sign in?
Yeah.
All right, we'll get it from there. I'd like to take 3 more questions, then we got to take a bathroom break. Then we're going to come back and we'll consider, the board will deliberate. So next 3 questions, who had their hands up? Sharon? You'll be next, and then you.
Karen Buffet, Enfield.
Sharon, I got to ask, is this about height?
Yes.
All right, go.
Yes. I first want to say to the developers, thank you for at least developing a building that is aesthetically pleasing. I do not agree with the height. I liked, Mr. Reagan, is that your name? I liked your point about where is a middle ground here? This is twice as high. And I live on Maple Street, full disclosure. So this will greatly impact the people who live on Maple Street in many ways, forever, because that's my concern is once this is built, this is here forever. I think we need to consider, and I'm asking you to consider more, the character of Enfield. You know, we are a 2-story town. Other than the Shaker building, the Great Stone Dwelling, we have no other buildings that are that high. And my biggest concern, Mr. Dean, I know that you think that in 2 years or a year that these zoning things are going to pass. I ask you not to guess the residents of Enfield, because if we get word that by opening up the regulations, I don't want a 73-foot high building built. There's only a 15-foot buffer now in zoning, if I'm understanding the new regs, between lots.
That would not,
Wasn't that just recently reduced?
that would not be the case.
I think it was, answer my question, please. Do you know whether that was recently reduced to 15 feet?
It was not reduced to 15 feet, no.
Well,
The buffers vary from zone to zone. And in the new plans, the buffer in one of the zones would be variable.
well, it's just the idea of, even though you say this is a specific project about height, and that if somebody else comes along about height, that you'll handle that separately. But I do believe that this sets a precedent for the next person to consider, well, why can't I build a building this high? And my last.
They can come and ask and we can say no.
I think it's gonna be a lot harder once you let the.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, because we decide every case on its merits. It doesn't matter that your neighbor did it or got away with it. We talk about what that case in front of us.
Okay, but what if the developer's saying, we'll give you this many $1 million and we can't do our project?
I think I'm quite insulted that you say that actually about that we would make our decisions that way.
I think there's pressure. I'm not speaking about any one of you. I think there's pressure. I feel pressure. And I'm imagining that you feel pressure. So I'm just speaking about that, but let me get off of that subject. So I would just, my very last question for the developers. It seems that Mr. Taylor
had a proposal, an earlier proposal that I saw a copy of. And it seems that it was very much like this, but it seems that that was not for this specified height. It seems that those buildings were 2 floors with garages underneath and not 4 floors with garages underneath them. Am I totally out to lunch about that?
It's possible that you are out to lunch.
I
about
believe
that.
at one time, we came before the planning board for an informal discussion. And at the time, the zoning was for 154 units. And we designed a building, I think it was actually 3 floors. A lot. I don't remember 2, but I think it might have been 3, but it wasn't 4.
Okay, well, that's my request, is that somehow, I think this is really out of the character of Enfield. And I think that there's so many buildings like this in Lebanon and Hanover where there's not, residences aren't being affected. The quality of the community isn't being affected. I'm not against development in Enfield, but this scale is too big. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I want to give Mr. Patton a chance because he asked quite a while ago and I forgot to put his. forgot to bring him up.
Steve Patton. And I live on Livingstone Lodge Road. So I think for everyone's benefit, we should see a existing site plan with elevation contours versus a site plan with the buildings and roads and landscaping all in it that would help everyone make an informed, intelligent decision. The elevations will make a big difference. If you look at them, you'll be able to tell how high something is and what you're going to be able to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. So let's offer the developers that feedback and say, perhaps if you generate that view that he's describing before you go to the planning board, and everybody goes to the planning board, they will be able to see those views and benefit as Steve describes.
Right.
It may relieve your concerns a little to see that, or it may prove your concerns. Yes, so Madeline's wondering about a site visit.
Yes. So am I.
Susan also.
And Sealy,
We're not,
we want to say,
they want a site visit. I'm not sure it would do any good. What's the
Yeah, what
state
can
of
we-
development
yeah,
up there
exactly, what can we
today?
s-
Welcome to go.
Yeah.
We can try and, could you make it say that's
It's,
the main?
well, you got the roadway, from Route 4 that goes up to the water tower. So that it's pretty steep. You could get up there. They could keep going, right, John? Yeah, you could walk up beyond that. It's pretty much a straight run right from the water tower road up. And then where the building sit would be a little bit off to the left.
And so you also said there'd be considerable site work. So is that gonna, like, it sounds as if you're gonna sort of shave something off to make it level?
Yeah, well, where it's a hill like this, we have to take this part of the
To
hill
make
and
it-
put it over here.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, thanks.
to create that.
Right, to make
Right.
something to build on. Okay.
So I'm not thinking that a site visit is gonna give us any information that we don't already have.
I always want a site visit, you know that.
I'm
But is
aware
it
of that, but
something
is
we
it gonna
can
give us
see?
information that we don't
Yeah,
have
is it something you
now?
can't see from Maple Street? Or I was driving from Canaan today and was, imagining what would
This
be.
is a hill with trees on it, is what you can see.
Right.
Right, so you know there's trees up there, you know that the site is gonna change significantly, and that we're not gonna have any idea after being up there what the buildings are gonna look like.
I think we need to see the site, but you know that I always think we need to see the site and I always go and look.
All right,
Bathroom break?
yeah, let's do our bathroom break.
Good.
So we're gonna stand in recess until quarter till. That gives you 7 minutes. If you're a little late, don't worry, I'm not gonna dock your pay. Cause he said it.
Yeah, Phoebe, they're also figures, I did done a lot of research on from the New Hampshire, state of New Hampshire. And those are figures, there's the New Hampshire, whatever the building, granted it's the house building, but they estimate for 100 rental apartments, that brings $11.7 million in the income and $2.2 million. So that's like, whatever, that's. And that's way.
Because they're improving value.
Because that's when they calculate through the budget, they add all that. No, I don't think so. What services, why would this? I don't know the. I'm sorry, I'm on my official, we're talking to each other.
What she's saying is, we have plenty of capacity in the school system. We can miss.
We can take them, but we gotta take them.
About 20, 30.
I don't, okay, so as I was thinking about this, is he said, this is a children, this is not the thing that's. Is that like,
That's what they've done.
this will be, I think this, what I heard was that, people, maybe have got big house, but they could, and then a family comes into a house, and a family.
They see more kids because of that. Like Fanny and I, 25 are. Yeah. I don't see the service costs, it would be stopped.
Seriously, what other service jobs do we have to do? What other, okay, what other service? Other services like this, okay, so you learn what, what's another service cost?
When the community nurse.
Population.
You don't even before the,
See that we're in the business.
It's gonna be an influx of 5 years. If the population back up to the last 10 years.
Yes.
It's hard to get used to the idea of something like this. coming out.
Yes. This is like. Can you try this one? I don't think they've got, my understanding of what was confident that they had got permission in the past, but one thing that was that crash and the reason that didn't come here wasn't because it was economic factors or anything. Somebody at previous company went bankrupt or something. I don't think it has anything to do with the combination that they.
They know.
But that, you know, one of those, Healy, the thing is, in this I think it's better if it's higher, because then there's the less it's so again, that kind of the height, part of that height is if they had garages under the building, that's all that area that's not getting paid. They could knock a few in that building, but then they have to put parking lots because the regulations in Enfield that you have to have that, you have to have that much. So, I don't know. Thinking about that, and it's better ecologically. If we want to have that, it's better ecologically to have them clustered than to have them in little houses all over. Cluster development is always going to be better than anything like house. No, I mean, it's, as I was driving for Canaan today, you know, I'm thinking there's gonna be this.
So he's made your life.
Yes. I've heard that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was definitely. Email him and say, right, this address, the light shining. Talking to you can't.
We had a couple of times where they.
Yeah.
Digging up in the street.
A good. That's right. And talk to.
Wonder if service line has any letters. Our research last year. I'm not gonna be done. Yeah, last summer. And we got to that service. Of course, we're not allowed to open back up. They have the days that somebody.
Just like the space.
Your first.
I know, it's funny, but I, you know.
That's not always.
One, I mean, it's hard to
Thank you for your.
I don't think it's time for. I don't think that's high. That are 35 feet. Right. I mean, I hear everything. That's just a lot. And then, you know, the reality is. The ordinance also says that if I bought my I made decisions based on that. No, but I was. And the last thing is you don't realize that. I didn't realize it was the same. Sorry, but I'm not. It affects me, right? You know, and I mean, like, somebody says, and you're saying, well, that's right. When you think about that, so suddenly I have this. And I can't develop it.
words, but I can't develop it. So these guys, that's what well, right now it has to have, I think it's gotta be. And like, develop it, but I can't.
You're like, yeah, I saw out of Australia, getting Mansfield.
That's where they're, I don't think it's within the best interest of Enfield, but I don't think, you know, like the gentleman who's from my place. But he said, well, at some point, what you get for it. I'm not gonna do it. It doesn't, so I'm, doesn't fit. That's why, you know, this town, that
She's really good. Yeah, that's what I'm going.
But he says,
It really called, like, he wants to bring on while she does hockey. I'm talking this part. Have a lovely
Right there. I understand. That's what I said. That doesn't. I think that doesn't, it doesn't.
Michael, your 7 minutes are up. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, they are. I'll get a meeting back.
Tammy, super quick question. Would one of your kids be taking my dog? In front of her.
But it's 2945730.
Louder, time.
All right, we're gonna reconvene. Anybody that still wants to participate, come on back in. It's my whole board here. Mr. Regan is here. Mr. Finger is optional, but I'd sure like to have you. Rob, you're not optional. All right, looks like we lost about half the people. Chris, you still got your hand up there on Teams.
Did he get his information? He wanted information. Did he get it?
That's why you got it up. All right, you got your rough building sizes? Shoot, Carl.
The question was about, really, what's the run of the roof and the rise of the roof? So, and that really goes to pitch, and if he's in the building trade, he knows what pitch is. So it's about a 7 to an 8 pitch roof.
Is that enough for you, Chris?
How wide is the building?
It's, the building is 80 feet wide with a center corridor, so that's 40 feet run, which is, basically a standard, that's a standard depth for an apartment building that has garage parking under with elevators. You can't do that with 60 feet. But the run is 40 feet and the rise is 20 to 24 feet.
What's the length of the building, roughly?
The length of the building, that was, I didn't, I gotta find that.
We don't have that on this plan.
240 feet
I
roughly.
thought they were talking.
No, wait.
Height issues, but,
Right, in the pitch of the roof.
You're talking about 80 feet deep?
yes.
All right, so that's 1, 2, 3 times 8. Is it 240?
Yeah.
So 80 by 240 by 70 feet roughly to get the volume.
240? That's about.
And you're talking about a 7 or an 8 pitch. Is that okay?
That's fine. That's fine. I have another question though.
If it's directly relevant to height or number of buildings on the plot, we'll take it. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you to defer it until you can talk to the developers directly or go to the planning board.
That it is directly related to zoning issues. So
Well, the zoning issues we're talking about here,
well,
tonight?
the missed zoning issue in this is I believe you're developing in steep slope areas. So there are 4 buildings that are in purple steep slope areas and are not part of the application. I just want to raise that concern because it's clearly on the map. It's clearly in the zoning ordinance. It has not been an issue that is put forth in front of this board.
Chris,
It's relevant. You wrote the zoning ordinance. It's a
No.
relevant question.
tonight, we're talking about two specific issues and neither of them are the one you're asking about. So
One
I've got to
moment.
ask you to stop and you can bring that to the planning, or if they come back for a variance about that issue, come and talk about it then. But I'm
Wouldn't-
gonna step off to someone else now. If you have something you'd like to comment on that's specifically about what we're talking about tonight, go ahead.
What, could you please outline, since the property is potentially in steep slope areas, what is the process for this development to go from these two variances to the next step? That's a legitimate question for the zoning board. You're the zoning board. Please
Why don't you let me answer, Chris?
please let me and the community know what that process looks like.
Okay, you can learn that by looking at the town's planning and zoning website in the documentations they have there. I'll
I've
shortcut
never, in all the professional time of doing this, if there are zoning issues that come forward, they need to be put forward at a meeting such as this. So is there another application put forth by the applicant? When will this be addressed?
Is something Rob?
You can talk to Rob, our zoning administrator, to ask that question. We're not going to address it here. I'm not saying your concern is invalid. I'm not saying that zoning ordinance isn't being violated in some other way. What I'm saying is that that's not under discussion here tonight. And I need to stop taking time talking about this matter now so that I can ask somebody else if they have a question about the matters we're deciding tonight. So you can talk to Mr. Taylor to learn about process and learn about when those issues will be raised before the zoning board. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Name, address.
Douglas Plumley, 181 Choate Road, Enfield.
Douglas Plumley?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a statement and a question related to the height.
Shoot.
So your decision today will be whether or not the increased height is allowable.
On this
The project
property.
can Go for it.
Right.
This property. So when you're making that decision, and I personally don't care what I see from the road or see from my property, I don't feel like I own my view, that's my personal feeling. But when you're making that decision, is the, like, people's personal feelings part of that? Like, so there was a mention of the property value and not being diminished because somebody can see another building adjacent to theirs.
It's a tough question to answer. We struggle with, so this is more a general ZBA question about our
Kind of,
process.
and I have a follow-up related to this specific height question.
Right.
But
It may sound callous, but generally, personal interests and opinions don't enter into decisions about land use law. Because the exceptions that we grant to a zoning ordinance run with the land. So if I give somebody permission to put an auto mechanic shop in a residential district, and we accept their assurances that they'll only do one car at a time, that's fine. You know, that person may honor that commitment to the town for the entirety that they own that property. But as soon as they convey that property to somebody else, that other person has the same variance. They could run a full-scale auto shop there. So we try to make our decisions based on what's good for the town and what's good for the property.
so is it fair to say your ability to see a property is not considered an injustice?
Or help me understand that?
Well, the fact that I can see my neighbor's property, whether the height is this tall or this tall, right? Is it considered an injustice if I don't like the look of the property? I can see the property.
What we'll take into consideration is whether professional realtors whom we ask for their opinion tell us whether that's going to diminish the value of the property. So if they think that changing the character of the neighborhood by putting up this large development that can be seen from May Street is going to reduce the property values of May Street, we will take that into consideration in our deliberations.
Thank you.
In fact, that's one of the criteria that, you know, if the realtors say, yeah, that's gonna kill the property values, then we can't grant the variance.
Thank you. I think it would be more of an injustice not to provide more housing, more diversified housing than personally, like, I don't care that I can see
Yeah.
property, than people being uncomfortable with what they can see from the road or from the personal.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
All right.
So I hope we can support projects like this, so we have more housing.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna close the public comment section of the meeting. It's been proposed that we adjourn this hearing to our next scheduled meeting so that the members of the zoning board have a chance to review everything that we've heard tonight, and that perhaps we will go up and have a site visit. If we do that, it will be a noticed meeting, just like this one is, and any member of the public is welcome to attend if they want to go for a hike in the woods. So if we do that, Mr. Taylor will notice the meeting.
That's
Counselor?
that's fine. If you want access to get there, we'll do our best to get you there and coordinate for Mr. Taylor to make it work. Just say if it's a public meeting, if we can put on the notice that it's not a developed site and there's risks and people go in at their own risks, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
And I've had a chance at the break to talk to Mr. Doherty and Mr. Dubé. And no promises, but we're gonna try and create something that will give a visual from the depth and grade and give a little bit more detail, and we'll send that through the office, so hopefully you'll have it by the next time.
That would be great. Okay,
So if I may, being the landowner, can I have them actually just sign a waiver against liability for me?
We can probably do a sign-in sheet and have that on it, and the people would do it, so.
We'll,
For you.
yeah, we'll have Mr. Taylor coordinate that. All right. I'm not saying we will. We got to find out what we're obligated to do, what we're allowed to do under law, et cetera.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so I think we're not going to decide this tonight. I think we're going to wait until our next meeting to deliberate the 5 criteria. Does anybody on the board have an objection to that?
No, I have a question.
Shoot.
My understanding is the planning board will not hear anything until we come to a decision on these issues. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The developers don't want to go before the planning board before we decide here, because if we say no, they can't do their project. It's not financially viable.
I have one, may I ask a question of the
Please.
developers? You talked about the impracticability of a flat roof in, New Hampshire. What about a shed roof? Would that be able, by doing that, would that change? You know, would solve the snow problem? Would it allow you to have the same amount of space, but maybe lower something? Is that?
We can look into,
Yeah.
we can look into
We're
it.
gonna
Yeah.
look at several different options,
Okay,
and hopefully we'll have some better information for the questions that were asked tonight at the next meeting.
great. Okay, thanks.
Okay,
Trade-off of the appeal, you know.
Right.
You start looking, trying to get a building colonial style with dormers and.
Right,
right.
And the sloped roof, and when you start changing it around, you're trading on it.
right.
But we'll look at whatever options we can. We respect all the comments that we've heard tonight, both from board members and the public, and we would like to get to a win-win. You know, we're hoping that you'll say yes, and whatever we can do to get you there, we'll do our best.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I was just gonna give you the date of that next meeting, April 9th.
So our next meeting is April 9th. It'll be held in this room. God willing, and the creek don't rise and no fires.
So would a site visit be a supplemental
Possibly before May
before
6th.
Yep, we would do it before.
Okay. But in the meantime, you said you could sort of drive up there. I mean, I don't want to get caught trespass. Oh, you can't. Okay. No, because they were talking, you can go up to the water tower. Okay, I was gonna, okay. I don't want to get in any trouble. or anything.
Challenge accepted.
There's snow up there.
Okay, okay.
It's got snow on it,
Great, okay.
so.
Well, and the water tower access will protect that area too, so that access would have to be given to get into the water tower.
Is that plowed out, the water tank?
I think they keep it plowed out, but the access is locked for.
Yeah, we could do like the limbo under that.
Well, yeah, but then you park it on.
Oh, yeah.
So I was, I
Yeah,
guess I
yeah.
was thinking of.
How does that work with me?
So that would have to be coordinated with the
I
water
would just
department.
go ahead. and-
Oh, yeah, maybe Rob could do that.
Rob's brother.
Let me think for a minute. Yeah, we're gonna, it's gonna be.
You know, is that roadway plowed?
Do what?
I'm putting that in.
Can you send a town truck up there and give it a push?
All right, folks, we have a few more matters of business to conduct as a board. But we're done discussing the Laramie Farms project for the night. That hearing is adjourned to the April 9th meeting. Possibly a site visit before that. All right, thank you all. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Wait a minute, I got this pen. I gotta give back this pen.
Dear board,
Yeah.
I don't have a copy of it in the 14 minutes.
Oh.
I know. I didn't look at it, you have to come back. I got so deeply involved.
They're all in my packet.
Very good here.
Would you mind putting them here? We can both.
Yeah,
look at- look at them.
I thought those were ours. Steve, I mean,
Well, this was the meeting where we didn't have any.
you certainly can. Yeah, if you want to leave them, that's fine.
Okay. It's gonna be easier to leave it. I don't bring it next time.
It first, before planning, it is very country up there, so just to.
Thank you.
Well, we wouldn't go except with them.
Okay, because there's a lot of downs, like walking is really tough. so.
Yeah, we're not gonna just go on our own. This will be an organized event.
Cause it also has to be public, so it would be a public meeting, so you would be welcome to come to that as well.
Yeah, just the property itself is hard to walk on now because of everything that's out there, so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. That'll come into our decision about whether.
His name is spelled wrong.
Yes.
Your name is Regan, Regan.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, that's it.
Go stand in the trees and look at them. That's what you're gonna do.
Like walking up Maple Street would be.
Where's Bill Finger?
All you're gonna see is the bottom of the tree.
Is he under the table there?
They sell really hard.
Hey, Bill, could you move these people out of the room, please? All right, don't anybody take off. Head for the door, people, if you don't want to be part of this meeting. Steve, Jean. Kurt,
Yes.
leave in this moment or come back for your stuff in 10. Because I don't want you, oh, you're gonna stick around? All right, okay, that's fine.
You're not in executive session, right?
Absolutely not. I just thought you were futzing around and packing your stuff up to leave.
Stand to irritate.
Love it.
I
Thanks,
think
buddy.
we have a few corrections, Whitney.
Oh, I only see one.
Mr. Regan's name is Regan, not
Did I do
REA.
REA?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so just do a global,
It's a few times a day.
yeah, just do a global replace on that, and then I didn't really see anything else.
We didn't see anything.
Yeah,
May I have a look?
sure.
Failed in my duty to prepare for the meeting.
I know, I got so involved in reading about zoning regulations, I completely forgot about the minutes from last time.
I didn't get an agenda until I showed up.
We got
Only
one.
been 4 months, 5 months.
I went and
Yes.
picked up my packet and Rob didn't give me an agenda.
They came out with the email.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, I don't know, I got it.
I didn't.
I don't see any problems.
I couldn't find it on
You
my.
couldn't,
Sent that.
I,
Okay, so that's
mine was in
60,
spam, but I don't know whether I
63.
sent it there or
Yep.
it went by itself.
I couldn't.
My
find it.
title has
I
been
came here. to
miswritten
get my
throughout.
packet,
And, yeah.
is the all-powerful,
But Rob.
the august,
wrote me one.
most elevated,
But it didn't have the November 12th minutes.
the greatest board chair in
Greatest board chair.
the history of the universe.
Modest too.
Right. Okay, I would like to entertain a motion from somebody to appoint Celia Offiero as a zoning board alternate.
So move
I second the
with
motion.
thanks and glee.
Got
We
it.
need you, Sealy.
Moved by Susan, seconded by Madeline. Discussion? All right, we'll need you to go to the town office and get sworn in.
Yes, okay.
Okay?
Yep, thanks for reminding me.
Yes, ma'am. I know where you live. I'll come get you.
Do you guys want to do a motion for the minute?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, do I have,
Thank you, everybody.
you're voting too, because you're still on the board until the end of the
Aye.
meeting. Aye.
Aye.
You're not voting, believe it or not, because the hearing that you were seated for has been discontinued. It's been,
Oh.
He should be,
For extras.
he should be on now.
he's seated for the purposes of okay, 5-0. I should stop fooling around. The judge that has to review this is gonna fire me. Right. Okay, so meeting minutes have been approved. Sealy is appointed as a alternate for 2024-25. The agenda's done. What the heck was I gonna,
Site visit.
right,
What about all the stuff that's still there?
the developer asked if he could leave it for us, and we're gonna,
No, the meeting chat.
that's recorded,
We have documentation.
that's all stored. Oh. Will you take down the finding, I should,
If you.
Can you
did
put
it
up the
on
findings
Word
of fact document?
I have that.
Put it up, hold on one sec. And
so these are the findings of fact that I wrote while the meeting was in progress. Please read these to yourselves, not aloud.
Can you, are you gonna send these out or something?
No, these go in the minutes. The idea is we compile a list of facts that we found.
Yeah.
In the discussion, and then we use those to support our assertion that the criteria has been met or that the criteria can't be met. So,
Do you want to add that it's in the R1 district? It's in, or in the residential district?
yeah,
Building height.
so. Yeah, I can do that. Since you got it open, would you add it there?
Yep.
You got it open?
Yep.
Yeah, just
I don't
new
believe
line
it's
there,
7.
put in, properties in the R1.
Rob, how long have they owned that 77 acres?
I don't, the master
I
plan
think these
doesn't-
at least since like 2006, maybe.
is occurring just this sort of development in town. I don't think so. You have to read the whole thing.
They're encouraging multiple, like a
Okay.
multi-family.
That may not be a
Right,
fact, that
but
may,
not-
that may be
not
my
this
opinion.
kind of thing.
I think it pretty clearly states what you have there at number 7. I read it just recently again, and
Maybe we could compromise and
But-
say that it's encouraging multifamily dwellings and more
I
dense
worked on the
concentration.
master plan. That wasn't.
you
the
have an
intent.
explicit reference to the.
Yeah, they're talking about more with the ADUs, and they want more housing, but they don't want this. No one said anything about this kind of housing. They would have said that.
The number
What do you
17 should be
Yeah, you
had.
shouldn't
Oh, we
just
definitely
remove
want
just this
increased
sort.
density. Yeah.
Master plan is
They want
increasing exactly
housing, but they don't want
multifamily,
this
multifamily and
We want
increased density.
You want what?
Density.
Yeah, that they're encouraging multifamily housing and increased density.
Yeah.
Rather than just this sort, because you could construe that as like a stylistic.
That's crazy.
You don't
Not
think we
this
want
kind of
increased density? It's-
Not
it-
this kind.
But it's absolutely it's Conservation.
It's
Commission
much better, yeah, increased
What
density.
what's gonna stop anybody else coming in?
Instead of saying dense housing, say increased density.
You know how few lots there are left with sewer and water left on them? There's not.
Yeah, no,
Okay, Celia, are you more comfortable with what I've written now?
No, change dense housing to increased density, Michael,
There you
Well,
and increased density.
go. I would say
I'll
zoning,
read it again and, unless somebody changed it, I don't know, I'll take the old one out, read it.
Mike,
I read it off the town website.
So I've changed the statement. I'm not saying that they're encouraging this particular type of development. What I'm saying instead is, that's a fact, is that we are encouraging multifamily housing and increased housing density. I think that's true. I think that's a pretty clear goal of the current master plan.
Yes.
number 8, Mike, I would change slightly. Zoning ordinance changes are being contemplated. We don't have anything proposed yet. And instead of saying to help developers, I would say to increase housing stock. That is sort of the nature of what the
could you,
New Hampshire HOP grant is funding for us is.
can you also move up so we can see number 20? You have 20, right?
That was the addition for the R1 district.
Oh, okay.
Do you want them in 2 separate lists, the findings of fact?
We have to deal with them as 2 separate motions.
Okay.
So Rob, out of
I don't-
curiosity, how does that work? So if it's on town
I
and
don't think we need
sewer,
2 separate lists.
does that do we pay a fixed rate for that? And so this just makes the pie, the
couple
pieces of the
items.
pie
No.
that people, how would this
It will,
come out, affect
three.
like Joe Common Man's sewer bill?
The repeats.
well,
Yeah, it was-
the thinking has always been that if you add users to the costs of operating the system, it's gonna help offset.
It will, okay,
But of course, generating more
Could you
outflow
get rid of that?
Right.
page?
will also be more expensive.
So my
Right, okay.
understanding is the sewer, we pay a fixed cost and a variable cost.
Correct.
So the fixed cost will then be spread over a greater number of people.
but the variable cost
And the
will be.
developer will
yeah,
also have to
okay.
incur connection charges from both Enfield and from Lebanon. Lebanon's called a development charge. It's kind of like when you build a new house and you hook onto the electric system.
Right,
They charge you basically for all the other customers have paid to build the system that you're hooking on.
right, so then okay,
Whitney, there's a typo
Got
in
it.
18.
got
What
it.
does that do to, the
Have.
density here, to our sewer system?
Plenty of capacity on sewer.
I'm editing also.
Pardon?
We own 300,000 gallons of treatment capacity at the city of Lebanon.
Okay,
Currently, we use about 70. So there's a lot of potential for increase.
what about the water?
Water is, these guys are gonna have to help us. We've talked to them about it. It's basically part of their impact fees for the town. Will be to help us develop, we have drilled 2 new wells. They're gonna help us hook them on, and they're actually also offering to allow the town to drill new wells on their land
And Mike,
with protection.
know that,
Guys, we have to be
Sorry.
really careful since we've let the public go and told them that we're not
Yeah,
considering this anymore.
so Mike, I don't know that I would consider 15 facts. The developer presented and threw a number at us. I would want to do a lot more diligence before I put that down as a fact.
All right, could we say the
Developer
developers
suggested, yeah.
asserts?
and they said 75 million. 35 is the corrected number at current valuation. And so the town of Enfield right now is way out of whack with our valuation, such that the state issues what's called a equalization ratio. And we're at about 56, which means our values, you know, as they stand at the town tax assessment, are only actually 56% of what they should be. So everybody's gonna get new values within the next 8 months, and they likely will go up drastically.
So you're thinking that even though the developer says this could add 35 million to the town tax base, they're saying that,
He said 75 million is the estimated cost of this project.
yeah, that's what I
And so the 35 is
Well, that's the
corrected
cost.
using.
Yeah, okay, right.
I hate to see my tax
6%.
bill when they get done with that.
You mean yearly?
This, what,
This is what I
why?
don't
Why do you think
understand.
this?
So no, it's
has
a
an
grand
increase
list.
in tax
So
bill?
if you have a house that's 100,000
Yep.
in value,
Doesn't increase to your tax.
that's what he's talking about.
Sure.
No, but they're
Value
reevaluating
and
the
obviously
values of
tax
all the
rate is
houses.
based on
If
that
they're-
value.
If they're doing a
1,000.
reassessment of the houses, that will affect your tax.
Oh, you're not talking about this project. You're talking
Yeah,
about.
talking about the
1,000
reassessment, the
valuation.
revaluation.
$2,500.
Stay on topic.
The house you let him build on Depot
35
Street.
million
So,
in tax.
Mike, another fact that ties into 15
That's value.
is
Not tax rate.
the converse of that has not been presented. So we need to know what's the increase in services. So if the increase in services costs us 40 million, we just raised our tax basis by 5. If the increase in services is only 20, then we made $15 million.
But
So-
again, this is, I guess I can explain a little bit more for you guys. So,
No, stop.
no, okay.
Hold on. Not relevant to this particular meeting.
Okay.
Increased cost of services as a result of development.
Yeah, I'm not kind of thinking we ought to make sure that our findings of fact are relevant. Some of these are like,
Maybe you should do them by category,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these don't have anything to do with height, right?
but but they do with the 5 tasks of
Mm.
those, whether it's good for the town overall, whether it affects the values. That's why I'm saying, Mike,
Right.
maybe if you divided them up and you go, oh, okay, that's relevant.
okay, I think for the draft minutes, that's what we want.
Do you want me to read those to you?
Well,
The 5 things and you can separate them?
no. I'm not gonna do that.
The first meeting.
Go big or go home, right?
Right into the fire. Yes.
So guys, on the surface, this seems like a simple issue. From other perspectives on the surface, this seems like an incredibly complex issue. The difficulty is in maintaining focus on what's relevant, deciding what's relevant. And then when we go into discussion and deliberation, each of us will try to convince the others to support their viewpoint on why these facts support or refute the criteria having been met. And that's where the fun begins. We often find ourselves not disagreeing much on a lot of the points, but we try to get into the minutes. You know, we'll make sure that the minutes reflect that we did discuss each of these criteria.
Do you have, there's no other buildings in town with the height of 7?
No,
Because there are the great stone
The
building,
school, the elementary
great
school,
stone building,
the
yeah.
community building,
What about the Copeland?
The what?
the community building.
Yeah.
We have buildings that are that tall.
thank you.
We have churches. We have the community building. We have the elementary school. They're all that tall.
What about the high school? The,
High school's in Canaan.
of course.
Still not close to this site. Great stone dwellings, only thing that's probably close to the site.
What?
The great stone dwellings, probably the only one that's close to the proposed height.
It's taller.
Isn't that kind of ironic, right?
It's taller. It's 6 stories.
That we talked
It
about
was the tallest building north of Boston when it was built.
in that big.
Well, the downtown used to be
Economically.
full of,
They're very economically efficient. That's why they did that.
the
But it
downtown
does
used to
not-
be full of boarding houses. If you look at a picture of it, it was all boarding houses.
Compared to with the
That word,
area.
4 stories.
No, I'm just saying that it was the downtown was once very industrial and
Yeah.
multifamily buildings were what it was full of. It was
Yeah.
full of boarding houses and multifamily
There was
buildings.
a grist mill right there by
Yeah.
the bridge.
How tall was the mill tower on the shore thing? You know, the,
At the Baltic Mill,
Smokestack,
yeah.
that was, I think, 1,265 feet.
But they
See
had
the
to tear it
base of
down
the-
because it was gonna
the
fall on
firebox,
the
and then
road.
it was like 9,000 feet above that. Yeah, they had route air traffic around. All right, I think we're about done.
Okay.
Good.
We got anything else?
Move to adjourn?
Any objections?
No?
We stand
Second.
adjourned. We will I'll make a decision with Rob about,
Site visit?
about a site visit, and what I'm gonna consider is whether it's safe for us to go up there. Whether the town's insurance is willing to, whether the town's insurance has anything to say about it.
This is,
I'm
cause
just telling you what I'm gonna consider.
the water, I didn't understand that our water tower is up there. Is that town property on the edge of his property?
The town is one of the abutters.
The town is one of the abutters, okay.
And
There must be a road up there.
Even more.
Anything about it?
Yeah, exactly. The
Yeah,
thing is that-
see that little square right there?
That's the water
That's the
tower?
water tower, and that's our little driveway going up right there.
That's our easement. And access is restricted. You're not allowed to go up there, and it's enforced by a locked gate. So if we wanna hike up there, we need to get permission from the town to do it. And we need to get somebody to open the gate.
Well, is there other, if that,
Hold on, let's make sure that Susan got an answer.
Can we? This is me
We're
being
adjourned.
I
modern,
was gonna
can
say,
we get a drone picture from up there, Rob?
Bob would love that. Let's ask Bob if he'll fly his drone up there for us. Seriously,
Would
Bob
that-
Cusick.
Would that